Hello, my name is Michael Massman. I'm an attorney with Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. This presentation is directed to individuals facing consumer debt cases, actions to collect credit card debt, or other types of debt. And it is meant to help them understand whether bankruptcy is a means to deal with that debt. So what is bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is a legal process that helps individuals or businesses to clear or repay many types of debt. It's a right that you have, and Abraham Lincoln, or Honest Abe as he's known, is pictured here to illustrate a number of points. Specifically, that bankruptcy is meant to be a fresh start for the honest but unfortunate debtor, as debts that are incurred by dishonest means are not eligible for discharge. And secondly, to illustrate that many respectable and wealthy people in the United States of America, including many of our presidents, have used the legal right of bankruptcy to deal with debt problems. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about how bankruptcy might help with a consumer debt case. Bankruptcy can potentially erase or discharge being the term the bankruptcy court uses for it, some of your debts, perhaps many of them. Can be an option to deal with your debt if you don't have other options. So you see here some reasons you may not want to file bankruptcy. So if you have a strong legal defense to the consumer debt case you're facing, and you can assert that defense in court, then that may be a much better approach. Similarly, if you have exempt income or assets, then filing bankruptcy may provide protection that you already have. So, for example, Social Security income is exempt income. That means if they have a judgment against you for thousands of dollars, they still cannot touch your Social Security income. So filing bankruptcy to protect your Social Security income wouldn't make as much sense since it's already protected. Another option might be to negotiate a payment plan over time. If none of those options really work for you, then bankruptcy may make a lot of sense. So let's talk about the types of bankruptcy there are. So Chapter 7, that's a liquidation. In a liquidation, property is sold. The money gotten from the sale of that property is then used to pay off debts. And in exchange, the debtor who filed bankruptcy gets the discharge, which again is the order from the bankruptcy court that cancels debt. So before you decide it's not an option for you because you don't want to lose property, you should be aware that California has a lot of laws that allow you to protect your property. And we're available to talk to debtors about Chapter 7 bankruptcies. Chapter 13s are a reorganization. That means that you come up with a plan to pay your debt over time. It's either a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, and at the end of that process, you get a discharge. And then Chapter 11 is a reorganization. So if you've read about a bankruptcy filing in the news, it's a company, then it's almost certainly a Chapter 11. Here at Neighborhood Legal Services, we focus on Chapter 7s. So here you see some debts that can be dealt with in a bankruptcy. So credit card debt, medical debt, other types of unsecured debt such as gym membership, payday loans, personal loans, if you owe for a car that's been repossessed or such. These are debts that can generally be discharged in a bankruptcy. However, other debts are more challenging, so something to think about before you file. So you see here a illustration of an IRS letter, a little bit more on tax debt on the next slide. But generally speaking, debts owed to the government are not dischargeable. Child support and domestic support obligations are not dischargeable, nor are debts related to death and injury for a DUI, HOA fees, and again, debts incurred by dishonest means, such as fraud, are not eligible for discharge in the bankruptcy. Other debts, perhaps you can discharge them, but it's not automatic. So for example, student loans, they're complicated. You basically have to begin a case within your bankruptcy seeking to have those loans discharged. Taxes, it's also complicated. You don't necessarily have to begin a case within the bankruptcy, but it's complicated. So if you owe taxes, you definitely want to talk to an attorney before filing bankruptcy. The same goes for student loans, and for liens. Liens generally do not go away in bankruptcy. So what does that mean? That means that if you owe a debt on a secured property, well, you may be able to get out of the debt, but that doesn't necessarily mean you get to keep the property. All of these are complex issues, and again, if you're dealing with any of these, you should talk to an attorney before filing bankruptcy. Some downsides to filing bankruptcy. Stays on your credit report for 10 years. Can make it harder to buy or rent a home. It can affect employment options, not in that you will be fired for filing a bankruptcy. That's not going to happen, but it may affect your ability to work in areas like banking or finance down the road. It's also going to result in higher interest rates and on loans and credit cards. It's going to make it harder to get credit cards and harder to get loans. And you should keep in mind that you may not be able to protect your home or other valuable assets. So again, talking to an attorney about these issues before filing is strongly encouraged. So here we see some key questions that you can think about to work through whether or not this makes sense to you. Will bankruptcy help me deal with all my debt problems? Or am I going to file bankruptcy and still have debt collectors contacting me and coming after me? Can I perhaps win my debt lawsuit? Do you have a defense that you can effectively assert in court? Will there be more expenses down the road? You can only discharge debts you owe as of the date that you file bankruptcy. So if you are perhaps dealing with a medical issue and there might be more medical expenses down the road, it might not make sense to file bankruptcy right now. Would a settlement plan be a better option? We talked a little bit about that. Sometimes you can come up with a plan to pay your debt over time. Should also be asking if your income is already exempt from collection. And if it is already exempt from collection, do you still want to file bankruptcy? If so, why? Can you protect all of your property? And then just a general analysis. What's your total debt? How many expenses do you have? And what's your income? If, for example, you could discharge all your credit card debt, would you therefore be able to operate in a way that you're saving money, whereas now it's all going into credit card payments? Is your income likely to change in the future? A lot of times it might make sense to wait for bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is great for dealing with debt in the past, but you really need a plan to pay your debts going forward, or you'll end up in the same position again. Here you see information to contact us, our website, our phone number, and email. You are encouraged to reach out to us. We help talk to individuals about Chapter 7s, provide self-help assistance, and so you are encouraged to reach out to us. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope the presentation has been helpful.